Clytus, I'm bored. What plaything can you offer me today?
An obscure body in the SK system. The inhabitants refer to it as the planet Earth.
How peaceful it looks. It must be annihilated. Send Rik and Danny on War Rocket Ajax. In 2013, Ming the Merciless, ruler of the known universe, declares the Earth to immediate termination. To accomplish this awesome decree, Rik and Danny are dispatched to the planet on War Rocket Ajax. The two encountered something they never thought they'd find, though. Movies. Stalled in their given task, Rik and Danny comb the movies of the Earth, sending reports of their greatness back to Mungo in what is now called the Hail Ming Power Hour. Well, hey, Happy New Year, everybody. This is our New Year's episode. We're bringing it into 2022 with a special episode of the Hail Ming Power Hour. I myself am Rick Morgan, one of your hosts, and I'm here with my brother, Mr. The other side of the chicken, Danny Bennett.
That's right. And welcome back to Hail Ming Power Hour. We're excited to talk about another one of our favorite movies. And for that reason, we also have a flaming Phoenix chicken with us.
Right. So he refuses to be seen, but that's all right. But it's our good friend, movie aficionado. This guy, let me tell you, I mean, I watch a lot of crap, but this guy, he buries me under the table. I can't find a movie that he hasn't seen. Or if I find something, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that 20 years ago. It's the one and only Jason Grey. What's up, man?
Hello, thank you for having me. That is a fantastic introduction, and I am doing great.
Yeah, we've talked about it.
I just want to say, you have found movies I haven't seen, and I immediately go out and find them and suffer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of them was Monster High. Oh, my God.
Ooh.
That was a rough one.
Yeah, I knew you were kind of, keeping up with all the short bus stuff. And that's the ones I was be like, wow, he's actually seen this. Yeah, not many people say, yeah, Winter Beast.
Winter Beast is amazing.
That's not the word I would pick, but okay.
I thought Monster High was a cartoon that my daughter watched. Like, is it not that?
It is that, and that cartoon makes finding the DVD so difficult.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's totally different. So, yeah, I don't recommend the movie version. With that being said, we're going to talk about a middle-of-the-road 1990s movie. Came out from 1994. It's a classic. I don't care what anybody else says. This movie is a classic. It really sets a tone for a lot of stuff that comes after. We are talking about the one and only The Crow. And we were talking about bringing this up, and we just happened to see Jason saying, hey, one of these days, there's going to be a show where I can talk about The Crow. We're like, hey, we're talking about doing The Crow. Let's crow it together.
And that's why I'm here. Yes, The Crow is absolutely one of my all-time favorite movies.
As well, it should be. It should be everyone's. I mean, I'm not just saying that because, that was around the perfect time for me, or the fact that it was one of the first well-executed comic book movies. Yeah. But just for the fact that it has its own mythology and it was incredibly well executed. And it's one of Alex Proyas's good movies. When Alex Proyas stumbles on a good movie, he makes a good movie.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. And who can forget when they say this in the movie?
You can count on my stool.
I mean...
You added echo. that's terrifying.
So yeah, man, 1994. I'll tell you what, we're just going to go ahead and jump into this one. And just, I'm going to ask it. Danny, I'm going to let you shoot first, man. What's your number one reason to watch The Crow?
Well, it might not be the best reason to watch it, but I'm going to say my number one reason to watch it is Ernie Hudson, surprisingly.
Oh, yeah.
Ernie Hudson brings so much to this movie. He brings the tone down when it's necessary, and he makes it. He kind of takes away some of the melodrama and makes it a little bit more real, which makes the melodrama play so much harder.
Yeah, to me, this is who you're taking the trip with, too, man. I mean, when I watch this movie, I identify with Ernie through all of this, and I don't know, man, and just his quirkiness, this the hard time he gets from his boss, and hey, your guy's on the roof, you missed him, he's great, man. I love Ernie Hudson anyways.
I wrote down kind of the same thing, that he just brings so much to this movie. He's his character is so gentle and caring, and not what you would expect from this kind of character in this kind of movie.
Yeah.
Well, everybody else is a douchebag. I mean,
exactly.
So, I mean, he doesn't do everything perfectly, but you're more on his team than anybody else.
Well, I think he was a juxtaposition from the James O'Barr comic. I'm going to say, I'm not going to lie and say I haven't read it in a long time. I haven't read the entirety of it. I'm familiar with it, and I think somebody let me borrow it in high school, and I probably read through the whole thing then, but I don't own it, so I'm not going to say I checked back through it. But I do think that the cop and Darla's character are additions to the story that weren't in the comic itself.
There is a cop in the comic, but he's a little bit more like the police chief or lieutenant or whatever he is in this movie. He's
right.
A little more in that vein.
Kind of more of a hard-nosed, yeah. Like. But
also, it's been a while since I've read it, so I might be misremembering that.
I'm familiar with it, and I haven't read in a long time. But I do remember there were some significant changes, but I think they were for the better.
Yeah.
Again, for storytelling's sake, I think they did a good job.
All right. Jason, I'm going to turn you loose, man. Give you some reason, man.
You can't talk about this movie without bringing up Brandon Lee.
Right.
No, that's absolutely right.
I haven't seen a whole lot of his other movies, but everything else before this is just, his performance is just kind of, he's okay. He's there. He was kind of known as just Bruce Lee's kid.
Right.
But with this movie, he elevates his performance, and like Ernie Hudson, brings so much to this role, so much depth.
Yeah. Oh man, it's the second thing I've got on my list. Of course, I'm an old Bruce Lee fan, of course, but I went and seen the other movies he was in. I really enjoyed Rapid Fire, but it still didn't break him through. There's no doubt that this was going to be the one that did it. And I'm sorry, we haven't found a replacement for him yet for The Crow. Look how many times they've tried to reboot and rehash and do this, and they just can't get it right.
No.
You have to credit that up to Brandon, man, because I think he pretty much nails it in this movie.
Well, and I think that James O'Barr had kind of rallied against having him because he was afraid of, like you said, his earlier movies, like Laser Mission and Rapid Fire and Showdown in Little Tokyo. They were all action flicks, and he was afraid it was going to become like a direct-to-video action flick kind of thing.
Right.
But he transcended the part. I mean, it's not I don't want to say it's not a beefy part, but it's a really gothic revenge story. So, it could easily just be, kind of phoned in. And I think he took it and he did everything he possibly could with it.
Yeah, he humanized the character in ways that I don't think a lot of their actors could.
Yeah, that's something that I think is what makes this so different. Because you can almost say, well, you're kind of taking the gothic feel of maybe Batman or something like that and creating the story. But what he does with the coming back, even though it's a revenge story, it's very humanized because of his emotions and what he does bring to it, that I really think it sets it apart from other things that are like it. Again, even watching it now, I haven't seen it in a long time. that really holds up. That whole aspect of it, he's still the right person for that role. Mm-hmm. It's quite amazing, actually.
And he's not the Terminator.
Right. He's not
and
cold-blooded.
He very well could be.
Yeah. Well, he can turn it on and off. But again, that's what makes it relatable to a certain degree, right? Because everybody has a sense of revenge in them. But when it's something to this level, look at how he can be, the hard killer when he has to be, but then turn around and can be gentle and try to right wrongs, right? I think about the girl's mom when he's forcing, the morphine back out of her arms and stuff. He's doing the right thing for the right reason. So creating compassion, maybe not necessarily for her, but because of who she is to the girl, right?
Right.
It's great. All right.
Yeah, he's not just an avenger. He's still who he was before he died, or he's still trying to hold on to that.
Right. Yeah. That's what makes it interesting. It's not really a reason. It's more of a question. And it's basically saying, is this the definitive 90s movie? Because this thing is a stamp of the time. It is
very 90s.
Yeah.
It is very much of its time. And even though it's of its time, there's also this kind of timeless quality to it. Like,
right.
When I watched it the other day to take notes, not that I had to because I practically had this memorized. Everything still really works. Yes, some of the effects look dated. Some of the performances are scenery chewing or campy or just not that good, but it still really holds up today more than a lot of other contemporary movies.
So my question about it is, it's almost how I look at RoboCop, right? Because RoboCop to me it's
a good companion piece, really.
It's a definite 80s movie. When somebody says, what's the 80s, you can almost throw that in and you're going to pick up on a lot of elements. I think this is the same way because of the music and the way that it's put together. But at the same time, it's very kind of timeless too. Kind of like how I feel about RoboCop. You can really interchange that to not necessarily being a timestamp, but it really is a sign of the times too. It's kind of a trick question, I guess I'm saying.
And somehow both movies are set in Detroit.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Although they never really say it in this movie. If you know the stuff about Devil's Night and they drop Motor City a few times, you kind of know this is supposed to be Detroit.
Right.
Well, and there are a couple of things that are, ubiquitous to the 90s. There's that weird slow-mo that they used and everything. I think it was on like it was on an editing software because a friend of mine in film school had it. And it was like this digital slowing effect that you see it in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and you see it in this, where they have these weird slow-mo sequences that just don't look right. And I'm glad that they stopped doing them. And like you put the nail on the head, and it's actually my next reason. The soundtrack. I mean, it's every bit 90s. And you got, music from the Cure and Nine Inch Nails, but you also got
Stone Temple Pilots.
You got Henry Rollins in there, singing his Ghost Rider song, which is just riding around in a blue jumpsuit. Yeah, it's like, what's going on here? But it is a time capsule to like that whole grunge movement and the industrial grunge movement that happened during that time, plus the goth movement. And I can't, I graduated in 93. So, I mean, like all this, the goth movement and all the, the esoteric, walking around at night with your long coat on kind of thing. That's definitely a snapshot of my teenage and early 20s right there.
Yeah. I mean, that's who you were when I met you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the soundtrack written down too, even though it's funny. This type of music isn't my normal type of music, but this soundtrack just hit for me minus like one or two songs.
Yeah. I wore it out. I agree.
I've got the CD.
You got Nine Inch Nails putting a song together for it. Nine Inch Nails didn't do what you wanted. Trent Reznor wasn't doing what people wanted him to do. But I guess, my guess is that they said, we're going to do this Crow movie. And he was like, oh, sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it's on my list too because, it's one of those things again that ties into that question I had because it kind of dates it, but it doesn't hinder it. It doesn't make it unenjoyable because of where it came from. So that's kind of the beauty of this. Even the shots of the bands that are playing in these clubs, it's total 90s, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't take you out of it. It doesn't take you out of it.
Well, because it's such a simple storyline. It could take place in any time. And sure, it's got trappings of a particular timeline, but it could be last week. Add some cell phones and it could be last week.
All right, Jason, back to you, man. What you got?
Well, since you took soundtrack from me, I'm going to say the score.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that just as much as the soundtrack, if not more. And it actually started getting me into movie soundtracks, movie scores. And I've followed Graham Revell's career since this movie. I went to see the movie Jade because they did the soundtrack for that.
Wow, that's
the score. I keep doing that.
That's a calling card right there. Hey, I'm gonna go see this movie because this dude did the soundtrack for it.
I feel the same way about.
I've not done that since.
Oh well, was it that Jade burned you, or just?
Oh yeah, Jade was. It was an okay movie, but not that great. Wasn't worth seeing in theaters.
Right.
But the score was good.
I feel the same way about John Murphy. When I see him on something, I know that it's going to have trappings of the same 4 songs he always does, but they're always just a little different, and I dig it. So I mean, yeah, I agree that the score really brings you in, and also the imagery. I think the storyboard artist and the person who designed the city really did a great job of making it bleak. It didn't look like any city I've ever been to. There was lots of high crosses and stone buildings and churches everywhere, but like it's really bleak, and it really does a great job of purveying the story when the story isn't just in your face.
Yeah, the miniatures like a lot have like we've said a lot already. The miniatures look kind of dated, but it still works for this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's again, you can put it up against anything else that's this kind of storytelling and it still works. So I have got for my next reason T-Bird and his death. I mean, I hate this guy. I can't even think of the actor's name, but no matter what he's in, he's one of those guys that you just hate. I mean, from the Warriors to Commando to Dreamscape, anything
Twin
this
Peaks.
guy's. I mean, anything the guy's in, you want to punch him, right?
Yeah, he does a great job playing this character. I mean, and I think this is the most egregious that character has ever been, as far as just hateable.
Yeah. Well, it's that Caesar haircut too, right? I think that's what did it. But yeah, man. I mean, I have to admit, I kind of dig the car, right? We took an old T-Bird. We put hey, how about him having like the LED lights underneath the car?
Like ground effects, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of ahead of its time.
It was right at that time. Yeah, it was very much very 90s.
Okay, I thought they were a little later on. I thought it was another year or two.
But yeah, I mean, him and his buddies all like taking shots and swallowing down bullets. It's like, there you go. There's your introduction right there. Your bad guys are swallowing bullets around a table in a bar. And
As I wrote down for them, they're doing shots of shots.
Yeah. That's a little morbid, considering the difficulties that this production faced.
Ooh, yeah.
But I mean, you can't help that. I'm glad they finished making the movie because it's a great homage, but it's such a tragedy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But yeah, I love the whole scene where, when he finally catches up with him, straps him in his car, duct tapes him to the seat, puts the bomb in his lap, sends him on his way, and you get that at the same time the lighting of the cigarette, lighting the lighter, and the emblem on the ground. It's just it's iconic.
It's a great middle point.
Yeah.
And that switch from his T-Bird's confidence of just being the not quite the top badass, but among his group.
Right.
And then once he realizes who his passenger is, and just it all falls away from his face. It's a greatly acted scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it flies in the face. You know, T-Bird is very much, you know, there's live and there's dead. You know, there's real and there's fake, and there ain't no afterlife. That's why I'm not worried about any, you know, penalties for my actions. Mm-hmm. He's very certain in all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And, you know, even to the point, I don't know if he's quoting Shakespeare or the Bible when he says, you know, and he saw how awful goodness was and all that he's reading. I know the lines.
That's the Bible.
I wasn't sure. When I rewatched it, I was like, it almost sounds Shakespearean. So I'm not sure. I always thought it had been the Bible, but I'm not familiar with the verse. But again, even that, he's mocking this whole afterlife. He's mocking it because he's so sure that, you know, nothing outside of this world can harm him. And that's what he's got to come to terms with right before he goes off that dock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I love that scene. And of course, you can't think of a better person to get killed off too. So.
Oh yeah, you got to hate that guy.
Yeah, even the cops are like, well, it's T-Bird.
Yeah, they're that way about all of them.
All right.
My next reason is in that same sequence. What about Skank getting hit by a Yugo? And the guy getting out being a dude with a ponytail who's like, you ass hair, you hit my car.
It's a Yugo.
I love this again, like, and I know I said it with Ernie Hudson, but I love this interspersed. It's almost like a real flat humor that goes along with it. This guy's like mad about him hitting his car when he just hit somebody in the street. And then, you know, it's followed up right after with the two cops, you know, and I was like, you can't even legally call this cream, put in his coffee. And then his partner takes off and he gets a lap full of hot coffee. It's like everybody not involved in that T-Bird scenario. It's just like a window dressing of bonkers humor to the point where Skank beats that guy up and starts trying to catch up with him in that Yugo. You know, it's like a little wind up car.
Yeah. If you've never ridden in a Yugo before, that's exactly what it is.
Fortunately, I have not.
I played in a band with a guy that had one, and I thought there was times we were going to have to get out and push it to get up some hills. So they pretty much nailed the problems of the Yugo in this movie.
Just the fact they had one in there is awesome.
Spinning off of this is something I wrote down as one of my reasons is just some of the just almost background throwaway lines of humor this movie has, like the guy hitting him like, you hit my car. There's a number of lines with Fun Boy after he gets shot. Look what you did to my sheets.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The cops no less than twice shout out, what the crap?
Oh.
The whole conversation about hot dogs. Where he's like, give me more onions, man. Give me more onions.
No, man, you got to put,
they make you fart.
You got to put the mustard underneath.
I have written down just for fun the proper way to make a hot dog.
It's a good times with Ernie Hudson, man. That's one of the people I'd like to meet, Ernie Hudson.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the stuff he's been in, man. I mean, be a great Q&A to see.
Yeah, agreed.
Sure. Yeah. All right, Jason, you want to do another one? Go ahead, man.
No, I kind of just did my next one with the throwaway humor.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do another one.
Okay. Graffiti.
Yeah.
I love all the tags that Eric does with the deaths. He does the big blood crow. There's the firebird.
Yep.
And to me, that was one of the big things the second movie got wrong was with this movie, Eric has to go and he actually physically creates the birds.
Agreed.
In the next movie, they just kind of happen for no real reason. And that
like floating in that canal, it just kind of forms the crow. It makes it more of an esoteric thing and less of an intentional sigil, right? Yeah.
Right.
Danny, did you and I go see the second one together? I know I saw
Probably.
it. I went and seen it in the theater, and I remember kind of going, yeah.
we worked together at that point.
Yeah.
I was really excited about it because I was a huge fan of the first one.
Right.
And, you know, I think I liked it because I wanted to like it. I haven't revisited it.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember going and seeing it in the theater and just kind of going, it was that thing again, right? I mean, you're missing all the lightning in the bottle that made the first one so great. And yeah, you're making him out to be something different than we were introduced to in the first movie. So that's kind of how you kill any series, right? Start changing it up.
Well, you know, plus they were trying to make this first one in black and white, and for other reasons, they decided to go ahead and just kind of give it a color scheme that was less on the vivid colors, and they threw that out the window with the second one.
Yeah,
it was more of a sepia tone, if I remember. And
that's what I remember about it too. Yeah,
it's a whole different feel.
Yeah. I mean, this movie is. I mean, you could almost say it's black and white. I mean, there's not a lot of color in it at all, except for the LEDs under his ground effects on his car. That's about it.
The color scheme of the movie is black, white, and fire.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I agree with you, though. I love the fact that he stamps these murder scenes. They're so ornate. It's very comic book. It's a very comic book.
Yeah. All right, I have got the pawn shop scene.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I love the whole introduction where the first guy goes in there and you're kind of getting how this whole system works. And then when Eric goes in there and he breaks all of this down for him, the whole idea of holding up the rings and saying every one of these is somebody's life. I mean, it's pretty awesome. It's really, really awesome.
Yeah, it's real preachy.
Yeah.
And in a good way.
Yeah, right. And the fact of him using that as a calling card for the rest of the group that he's coming after him, right? Yeah. It's a great setup. It's a great scene. This is where you get to see a lot of different sides of the character through Brandon as well. I just think it's a well put together scene, man. And the guy, go ahead.
It is lifted almost word for word from the comic book.
Oh, really?
With a few exceptions.
It's good when they can do that, because a comic book is a storyboard, and that's what made Zack Snyder, you know, where he is today, is that he realized that a comic book is a storyboard, and if he sticks to it, then all he has to do is not screw up the cinematography. I got my, you know, personal issues with him, but he does realize that when people want a comic book movie, the source material of the comic is the best place to go. Don't rewrite it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason you were talking about making it in the first place, right? Because you had the material already.
Right.
Why screw with it, right? Yeah. True. All right, Danny, what you got?
I got the crow's eye view. There's a lot of scenes that have the crow going in first as kind of his scout, where he's his link to the mortal world. He's his hunter that leads him to his next victim. And the scene opens up with this walleye, colorless view of the crow, you know, flying in and kind of getting the lay of the land before he walks in and does the task. And, you know, just like there are so many scenes that are like that, where there's a central point and everything radiates out from it. I don't know if that's the cinematographer, Darius Welski, I looked up, and I did look up the guy who did the score too, but I didn't write it down, or if it's Alex Proyas, because it's a fantastic way to kind of like just give you a real global view of the action before it occurs.
Gives you the whole Beastmaster feel, right?
True.
All right, so you know what? Thinking about that whole scene, and bringing up Alex as the director, I can't help but bring up Dark City, because
another one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, and I can
so
see
good.
why. Yeah, and
it's so good. It's unsung, like people have not heard of it, but it is so good.
And I think that kind of allows you to say, yes, he was the right choice for this movie, because it just works. Yeah, he has that look, and I don't know. Kind of going with what Danny was saying. Don't know if the cinematic ideas are from Alex or the cinematographer that he's got, but it really puts a stamp on that style of work.
I don't know about the director of photography either. Like as Bill Pope and Barry Sonnenfeld started out as DPs, and you can see their movies immediately.
Right. Yeah, no question about it. All right, Jason, what you got?
Tony Todd.
Tony Todd.
You know, I'm going to say this right now. I'm so shocked that Danny's first reason was not Tony Todd.
I love seeing Tony Todd, but he's kind of a throwaway character in this. They could have put anybody there, but I'm glad they put Tony Todd there.
Yeah, but like a lot of the other actors in this movie, he brings more to that one small character than he has any right to be bringing.
Agreed. He's so formidable.
Yeah, I mean, it's Tony Todd. I mean, you know, everybody knows that listen to this show that we are huge Tony Todd fans. And I totally forgot he was even in this until I started watching it. It's like, holy crap, that's Tony Todd. You know, because he's not typical Tony Todd where he snaps his eyes and says something like, look, you know.
You're right, right.
Yeah.
He's real cool.
Yeah.
In this one.
And at this point, Candyman had come out by now, right?
Yes.
Yep.
It's 92.
And so it's kind of he's kind of off to the side. He's at this point you would have expected him to be the big bad, but no, he's just another secondhand soldier at Top Dollar's side.
Yeah.
It's true.
And he plays it well. You have to have that character, right? He's the one that kind of keeps us cool about everything. He's the one that can go and get the information. You know, he's the one that goes out and grabs a girl. He's got his crap together. He's not like the crazy bunch that are going out and tearing up stuff. Burn it up, burn it up, you know?
Burn it up, burn. Yeah.
So, yeah, he's Mr. Cool in this one, man, and you have to have that.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, if I had Tony Todd as my right-hand man, I wouldn't be too worried about stuff.
Right. Yeah, what you got to worry about? Right.
Kane Hodder.
That'd be a pair right there. How about the first throwdown in the alleyway, right? With the guy with the knives.
Yep. 10-10.
10-10. You know, yeah, I mean, it's just a great introduction to what, you know, the character can do, because he's still learning his abilities too, right? Because he just swan dives off the top of the building, crash lands, and laughs when he hits the ground. And that's just setting the stage. And then you start seeing the anger build as he gets a little more brave at what he's able to do. You know, you get a lot of information in this scene of what he is and what he becomes as the story, you know, develops. I don't know, man. It really sets the stage for what's to come, and could be the best kill of the whole thing as far as the battle itself, right? It's a good fight.
Yeah, with the fight and the kill kind of work well together here. My favorite kill is T-Bird because, you know, nice big explosion and that fire really sticks in your memory.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's no conflict to it. He just duct tape to the chair and it's done.
This you're seeing the abilities, you're seeing the hands-to-hand kind of combat stuff. There's so many of those things that come to mind, even with Fun Boy getting shot through the hand and going, woo! What would you do if all of a sudden you were the Wolverine, right? You just instantly heal. Yeah, what kind of attitude would you have?
Well, it ends, there's no doubt that the 10-10 kill ends with the best one-liner. Where he follows the knife up and suddenly he's right in Tintin's face and he says, "Victims, aren't we all?"
Right.
It's just good time. You know, it's tables are turned.
Yeah.
You know, these guys are now put on notice that they're not in charge of the situation anymore.
Right.
And you can say this about so many revenge movies, but I think it's really evident here that this is really a slasher movie, but you're on the side of the slasher.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's a revenge flick. I mean, it's
Tell me this isn't I Know What You Did Last Devil's Night and you're on the side of the Gorton's Fisherman.
I'm always on the side of the Gordon's Fisherman. It's his fashion sense that gets me.
Yeah. It's hard to sneak up on people in a set of rubbers. What's that squeaking sound?
I don't know. Just forget about it, baby. It's probably the wind. I mean, he definitely approaches the kills with the methodical nature of a slasher, but he's a killer killing killers. So
yeah,
just like I spit on your grave or anything. He's
Pumpkinhead.
Pumpkinhead is in your mind.
Yeah, I mean that's a great case for it because you're rooting for this guy to get revenge for what they did to Shelley and him, and yeah, these are bad guys. And
they have to keep the up in the ante, and that's why they've got top dollar there because though he wasn't there, he's so much worse a guy because he's not just an anarchist on the ground level. He's the one that's making sure that people keep getting hurt.
Right.
Yeah, and like he says, he's the one that made the decision to clear that building and get rid of them.
Right. And he's got such awesome fashion sense. That's 90s right there.
Yeah.
Talk about 90s.
Yeah, that's true.
Top dollar.
Yeah. Yep. And you got his sidekick. I like her eyes. Adding that messed up, kind of personality there. Possibly the most dangerous person out of the bunch.
Uh-huh.
I mean,
she knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, she knows. Yeah, she figures it all out, right? So she's the seer of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. It's awesome. All right, Jason, I know we talked about this. Danny and I saw this opening night back in the day. I believe that's right. Did we go see it?
I think I may have seen it before. I'd have to look up the timing on it. I know we've seen it together.
It was like a midnight showing when it was released.
I used to go to those all the time. I don't remember it being, that we saw that together. We've seen some movies. I don't think that we saw this.
All right. Well, maybe not then. I thought we did. So, I know we've seen so many together. It's hard to remember them all. We definitely did the Star Wars trilogy.
Yeah, definitely. And when they re-released them.
So, but I want to get to, because I know Jason has such a fondness for this movie. What is it to you that you think, what makes it one of your all-time favorites?
In a lot of ways, it's the simplicity but effectiveness of the story. The revenge story is simply told. It's got this heightened level of reality to it.
Yeah.
And it's just such a personal story that's so easy to connect to. It's almost hard to explain exactly why. I'm sure part of the reason why this connects to me is I saw it at the age of 17 or so.
Right.
Yeah.
And at the height of my love of comic books and getting into that whole, well, I never really got into the whole goth thing, but there's some nostalgia to it, and just it hit it at just the right time for who I was at the time.
Well, it's the fact that it got it right too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's always a winner, right? When you feel like they finally got one right, and it's impressionable time too, right? So yeah. I mean, and
it doesn't take itself too seriously like this sort of movie could easily.
Right.
It's not too funny at the same time. It knows when to do which sort of thing. It knows when to go for the horror. It knows when to go for the laughs, just to keep things light and almost real in a way, even though this is such a unreal movie.
Well, you bring up a great point, because if you took the scene where he's on the rooftop and he's playing the guitar, could totally take you out of it if somebody else did it.
Right.
But because of the way that they put it together and the fact that it frustrates him and he ends up, getting mad and destroying the guitar and stuff, it works. Whereas in other cases, it wouldn't work. So I think that's a very great point, because the DC plague, right, that they've got is they do take it too serious, which I think they're starting to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right on track with this. I think they did just the right mixture of everything to make this thing work. And you got the right person playing in the role. It's the lightning in the bottle scenario, right?
Very much so. And another thing about it is you can go into this movie and just come out of it enjoying a very simple revenge story, but there's more to this movie. They actually worked in some really decent sort of philosophy isn't quite the right word, but the emotions and I'm struggling for a good word.
Like themes.
Yeah, that works.
I'm sure that it's not perfect. The perfect word is always on the tip of your tongue, and it usually comes around later.
Yep.
Yeah, it's an art house action flick, and that's a tough line to take. Where you want it to be poignant and you want it to be artistic, but you also want it to be like enjoyable and consumable. And I concur. It's kind of like I was thinking of it while you guys were talking about it. I was thinking about what other superhero movies. There's superhero movies they had done up until then that hold a place for me. Darkman's one of them. And Sam Raimi, just he's so over the top. It's hard to compare the two because I don't think that's art house, but it's definitely like fun. It's like crumbs on the floor. It's like popcorn at the movie.
It's more grindhouse than it is art house.
But then there's also like Blade, right?
Right.
Blade almost, but Blade's got vampires and ultra gore and lots of like big set pieces, like the big altar at the end and all this stuff. The Crow is you fell into it and you fell into the story and you felt like you belonged in the story. You know what I mean? Like you didn't fall into the story and you're watching to see what happens next. You fell into the story and you feel like this is my story too somehow. You commiserate with the right people and you hate the right people, and the story goes where you want it to go ultimately with some challenges in the middle. Like the whole he loses his immortality because they target the Crow, which I think is another thing that wasn't in the comic, but it added this element of mortality,
right,
that you need to commiserate with the character.
I think you nailed it earlier, even when, Jason bringing up it being a slasher flick. But also, when you brought up, I Spit on Your Grave, those kind of things, right? That's really what this movie is. In its simplistic form, it is a grindhouse flick. It is an exploitation flick. It is I Spit on Your Grave. It's just done in a more fantastic way. Right. So you're taking that simple story, which has been told time and time again, giving it a little flair, give it the gothic background, give it a good soundtrack, and it becomes a new bird. See what I did there?
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, what was I going to say? I just forgot what I was going to say because I come up with that cool thing. This movie should be full of fillers, right? It very easily could be because of the simplicity of the movie. It could be chock full of filler, but it's not. And I think that's what sets it apart.
Yeah, for me, I think I come back to one particular scene that to me is the heart of this movie. And that's when Eric visits Albrecht in his apartment. And that scene it grounds so much of this movie and makes both of them so human that you just buy into all the fantastical stuff in this movie.
Right? Yeah, good point.
And it had this pervasive melancholy throughout this movie, but particularly in that scene. And it's almost heartbreaking, which is not anything you would expect if you told someone what the plot of this movie was.
Hey, he's sitting there in his boxers. He's still wearing his hat, and he's like, "You're wearing your hat." He's like, "Oh, get it." It could be anybody in that apartment. Unlike when he meets Sarah, she walks into the desolation of the destroyed apartment, and he's standing against the backdrop of the window that he went through. All that is very comic book. So you need that interaction, and I absolutely agree with you 100% that interaction between him and Albrecht manages to make you care about everything so much more, because also Albrecht was there as the bystander who didn't die, and he couldn't do what Eric is doing now. He probably feels that same rage, but he's like, I can't do anything about it. I've got to move on and do the best I can for the living. Whereas Eric comes back to do right by that, and you can kind of feel with Albrecht that he's helping to do something to right some wrong.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the acting in that scene is just phenomenal, especially for this sort of movie.
Yep.
I love the way that Brandon Lee walks around like he's seeing things for the first time too. Like he knows where to go to the fridge and he knows what the beer is and how to open the bottle, but he looks at it like, what is this again?
Yeah.
Is this why I'm here? This isn't why I'm here, but I open this and drink it. That's what happens.
There is a lot of that in the movie. If you pick up on it, he comes out of the grave and with like no memories whatsoever. And he slowly accumulates them as he goes along. Either he follows the crow to his next thing and he picks up the memories of this or that. He comes to his apartment. He pets his cat, which I must say, Gabriel is a shockingly good-looking cat for being left alone for an entire year.
He's in good shape.
Agreed.
Must be some big mice in that area.
And he's slowly rebuilding his life and relearning it. And little thing that Brandon does drive home that he isn't part of this world anymore. He doesn't know certain things.
Yeah, and there's again, just to bring up Darkman for a second, there's a parallel in that where he goes into that lab and there's a cat there and he reaches down and it hisses and hits him. It's like the vengeance that he's there for. Yeah, somehow the animals, the crow's involved, but like the cat's like, there's something wrong with you. I can't. He has to kind of win back the real world. But right now he's just vengeance, right. I don't know if that even tracks, but I saw that and I thought of both of those scenes. Also, I spent a lot of my time in the 90s, hoping that I could, dig into a dumpster and find an awesome trench coat, because it seems like everybody in those movies is like, oh, well, let me just look in this dumpster. Hey, look, the coolest like anti-hero costume ever. And it never happened for me. I had to go buy coats.
Well, they never show the bum that it's on, that they have to take it off of. That's laying there dead.
I love nobody. It's cold out here.
And that was another thing I liked about this movie is little details they get right. Like when Eric crawls out of the grave, you see the slit down the back of his coat. He's not wearing any shoes, which is what they do when a mortician takes care of your body. They have to put the clothes on while you're laying down. They don't bother with shoes. And it's another one of those little. It's another one of those little details that ground it in reality before throwing you into Wolverine revenge mode.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I think that like you said, that little detail of the slit suit. I noticed it this time rewatching it, and I was like, "Did I notice that before?" Because I definitely noticed it now. I'm sure I have every time, but it's such a good detail that it doesn't take you out of the story. Like if he had just appeared on his tombstone next to the crow or something, like somehow having him claw his way out of the ground makes the whole thing more visceral, even though he hasn't rotted or anything. Like there are all these it's like, this is important, but this is not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I really think the choices that were made there were all really good.
Yeah, there's a lot of show don't tell with this movie, and it works very well.
Yep, yep, and that's again the magic of this one, getting it right. You don't have to over explain. Let the story play out. You got everything you need here already. Based off the comic.
Yep.
Just trying to capture that and make it work. I love the idea of how do you knock off the number one bad guy at the end? Well, you give him all the memories that you have stored up, the vengeance, literally giving it to him. And that's what does him in. So, I mean, it's just great. It's great.
Yeah, he just transfers it to him. It's absolution. It's like, I don't need this anymore. I'm done here, but you can have it.
30 hours of pain, I think he says, right? Is that what he says?
All at once.
All at once.
And it's very much a reckoning for Top Dollar to just have the consequences of his actions thrown in his face.
Right after he so pompously, admitted to him, oh, that's me. Nothing happens without my say so. Right. It's like, oh, you know what? Why don't you take it then?
He's a great bad guy, man. He really is.
Yeah.
I really love I think it was the first time I saw a villain that was just bored. The sense of ennui that the character has. And when he says to Eric, "You have put a smile on my face," like, for this one day, he had fun again, which is so core to the character. The boardroom scene earlier when he's like talking about the crass commercialization of Devil's Night, and he wants them to light a fire so big that the gods notice us again.
Right. Yeah.
And he's such an idiot too. Like, are we having fun or what? It's like you are not. You're only like. I don't know how he clawed his way to above all of his thugs because he's right there with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. All right, I don't have anything else. Danny, you got any wrap-up stuff on this one?
There's the hangman's joke thing. There's the Sarah meeting him, and there's a lot of great points. But I think that all it does for me is it continues the point that they made good choices.
Yeah.
Like me pushing that cat off the back of the table. I'm sorry. And they chose great imagery, like that the window he goes through being used for so many pivotal scenes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to point it out earlier, but I think that it was pretty close to what Jason had just said in some way, and I didn't want to traipse over the same thing, but I do want to say that portal, that eye, that round window, is such a great image to repeat and to go to for so many important scenes.
Well, I mean, you think about that immediately when you think about this movie because it is such a big part of it. Just imagery wise, that's just one of the things that stands out, right? Is that window. And yeah, it's again, just iconic. All right, Jason, what you got, man?
Honestly, after Albrecht's apartment scene and the rooftop confrontation, I really don't think there's too much more to say about this movie at this point, aside from, like Danny said, little tiny things. But at this point, I really think we've covered the good stuff.
Yeah. I'll just say that it really surprised me how well it held up. And really, if not, I probably enjoyed it more now than when I saw it, because I'm looking at it through a different set of lenses now. And I was really impressed with how well it's put together. The flashback scenes don't take you out of it like it does in a lot of other stuff. It's just solid, man. It's a solid, well-made movie. And there's so many factors of why it works. We've talked about all of them, but you have to have, I think, this combination for it to work right. I'll be surprised if we can ever put another one together and it still have the same abilities that this one's has got.
This surprises people every time the topic comes up, but naturally everyone comes to me with wanting to know my opinion on if they remake the movie. I actually kind of want to see what they do with it.
Sure.
Times have changed. They can do closer to the comic book. They can, there are admittedly a few dated bits of this movie and some overly campy performances they could do away with. And if they make a new take on the movie, it will not take this movie away from me. So I'm all for seeing a remake. It just, at this point, they've been talking about it for 20 years, so it'll probably be another 20.
Yeah.
This is one of those that you could definitely do a sequel to or a reboot, however you want to do it. And there's still enough playground to make it happen, right? But again, it's just so much of it is so important of who you get in the role, if you're going to follow the actual material or not. And I think that's where things kind of get off course when they just start wanting to crank something out because they've got a deadline of when they got to get something done.
Right, because it's an IP they know that people will go to see. Too.
Right.
The only reason we want to make this movie is we know that it played before.
Right.
And that's not a good reason.
Right.
And like we always say here at Hail Ming, I wanted to say this. There are things we could talk about that we didn't, that were well put together scenes, but it's not going to compare with you going out and watching it yourself.
Absolutely.
We gave you our high points and our favorite moments because we want to entice you to check it out if you haven't. because like Rick said, it holds up, and it's a quality film.
It really is. And it shouldn't be. That's the thing. This is I'm serious. This is the kind of movie that would, I think, and that's part of the problem, is it would easily be overlooked, right? Of it being a comic book movie or being a low budget or even a grindhouse kind of thing because of the subject, matter that's in it. But it's really surprisingly well made, well put together, really good, solid acting. It knocks it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, Jason.
Yes.
I want you to take the time, tell everybody where they can find all your stuff, everything you got going on, because I know you always got something happening.
Yeah, my main project these days, as it has been for just about 13 years, is Triskaidekafiles.com, where 3 times a month on the 1st, the 13th, and the 26th, because 13, I take a look at some obscure, cheesy horror movie, and I mix in a couple of the classics just to kind of bring people in. You got to talk about Friday the 13th to appease the masses.
True.
But a lot of the movies there are in the same vein as you talked about on Short Bus. And my other project is an actual podcast, which kind of went on hiatus a while back. And my motivation has kind of, my get up and go has got up and went, as I like to say. But it's slowly coming back. I've got a couple things recorded. I kind of want to do a side project with that where the main show always, I should mention the name, The Bloodstream.
Right.
As I like to say on the show, just search for The Bloodstream, and it's the podcast that is not about medicine.
It's a good caveat.
Yeah, right.
And that the gimmick of that show is basically finding stuff that's on streaming and just kind of rambling about it. The main show is pretty produced. I throw in clips. I sometimes do little skits, but that's very tiring. And I kind of just want to do a sideshow, not a sideshow, a side project where I just sit down and talk about a movie and don't have to worry about all the production of it, just because I love talking about really weird, obscure movies that I stumble across, because they're just fun to talk about.
Absolutely.
Whether they're good or bad.
Yep.
And those are my 2 main things right now.
Yeah, I didn't know where you were on the Bloodstream. I didn't know if that was still going or not, but I remember checking some of those out. And you're exactly right. I mean, call the kettle black. Look at what we do here, and it's always been about the bells and whistles and stuff. But the most important thing is talking about these movies and getting people to check them out. And it's a hard sell when you start talking about Short Bus, all these kind of movies, right? Because unless you can really point out just how crazy some of this stuff is that makes people go get intrigued about it and go check it out, it's a hard sell. It's easy to say, yeah, Friday the 13th.
Right.
It's been done, but trying to get those things that other people haven't seen that's a task, right? So
right. Then you have the idiots like me that listen to the show and are like, "Oh, that's a really horrible movie. I have to go see it.
I got to check it out." Right? Yeah. Yeah. We know who
service.
That's who the audience is for, right? That's the same thing when Danny and I decided to do this. It was, hey, we just want people to either check them out for the first time or revisit them. Just like in this case, if we weren't talking about The Crow, it'd probably been another 5 or 6 years before I watched it again. And I'm glad I did. And now the thing is, hey, folks out there, do something for yourself. Go pull out a copy of The Crow and watch it again. I think you're going to be surprised.
Yep. And remember, it can't rain all the time.
It can't rain all the time. Yeah, I love it when she pulls out the record and starts playing, it starts going 6-6 crush. 6-6 crush. That's who we need. We need Sammy Kerr and Eric on the rooftop playing guitar together.
Oh, that would be epic.
I think Sammy Kerr was in that car with T-Bird too, wasn't he? Rock's Chosen Warrior.
Rock's Chosen Warrior, which may be coming to Ming really soon, folks. You never know.
Yeah. I hadn't watched it in a while, and I was super surprised at how good that movie is. Like, I loved it, but I thought it was like, oh yeah, I've got these rose glasses going on.
Right.
No, it's just really that good.
Yeah, it's a good one, man. For another episode.
Yes.
All right. Danny, you got anything else?
No, thanks for listening, and go check out The Crow. Thanks for being here, Jason.
Yeah, man.
Glad
Jason.
to be here. This is a great episode and movie to make my debut on the Hail Ning Power Hour.
Absolutely, man. Glad you joined us, buddy.
Glad to be here.
All right. Folks, adios. We will check you later and have a happy new year, yo. Oh, that's the wrong sound. It's this one.